Hello, and welcome back to another video on coding with Soham Jain. In today's video, I'm going to be going through how you can create your own weather app using JS and Express. So to start off in today's video, I'm going to be using the API web service that the National Weather Service provides. And essentially, you're able to use this for any website that you create without having to worry about copyright or other legal issues. So for example, the one that I'm going to be using in this video is for Washington, D.C. And essentially the way that the website will work is you can be able to enter this latitude and longitude, and it will give you the weather for the next week. So this is what the website looks like. I've already coded it, so in this video, I'm just going to be going through the code, and I'll also link it in the GitHub down below in the description. So to start off, let's start off with this index.js. And the first thing we're going to want to do is use this constant express and create our own app. And once we've done that, we can also add in this code so that we're using Express as our view engine, and then also using HTTPS. So the first part of our app is this slash get weather. And what that's going to do is render the form. So if I go to form.express.js, just for a note, you want this to be in the views folder. And essentially, this is just the form. So after I've gone through some of the CSS, down here is the main part. So we're going to have one input field for where you can enter the latitude and another input field for where you can enter the longitude. And once the user has done that, there's a submit button down here. And what that does is it creates this URL down below. And once you've typed in the latitude and longitude, it appends it to the URL of the website. Now going back, we see what happens when this URL is changed down here. What the JS file does is it takes this latitude and this longitude, and then it appends this to this URL right here, which is the API URL that I showed at the beginning of this video. And once it does that, it's able to render all of this information from the API. And what this includes is the weather for the next 7 days. So what we want to do first is gather all of that data from, and then also redirect to get weather slash results. And so as it's gathering this data, it's storing it in the list that I created up here, temperatures. And we're able to get all of the temperatures for the next 7 days. The way we're doing this is by response.onData, and we're appending the chunk to this aggregated response string. And once we've done that, we're able to get this forecast URL, and at the end redirect to the results. Each time in the loop, what we're doing is we're creating this so we're using this res.locals and pushing it to the list that I mentioned before, which contains the temperatures. And what that does is it goes to data.properties.relative location, and it gets the city here and the state here. And it's also gathering all of the weather down here. So essentially what it's doing is pushing first the city and the state, and then at the end it's going through this loop which iterates for data.properties.periods.length, and it's getting the name, temperature, and detailed forecast. So I'll show you by running the website what that looks like. So when I create a new terminal and I run node index.js, I'm able to open up my website over here. And it's going to ask me to enter the latitude and longitude. So if I copy from the URL over here, and I enter the latitude and longitude and click submit, it'll load the forecast for Washington, D.C. So that's essentially what I was doing before. If this was another area, like let's say New York City and New York, it would take the city as New York City and the state as New York and show that in the title up here. But since it's Washington, D.C., it will just output that. And so this is what we're doing for the next 7 days. It'll show the temperature for the exact time. So for example, it'll be Friday in the morning or Friday in the night, and it shows the temperature in Fahrenheit. But then also what we're doing over here in our code is taking this detailed forecast, and that's essentially a sentence or two, or possibly even a couple of sentences that describes what the weather is like for that day. So we're not just giving the temperature, but we're also giving a more detailed forecast of what's going on. So this is the main part of the code right here. It's showing what the forecast looks like. and then we can go back and enter a new latitude and longitude. And so over here at the end, we're getting the results. So I'll show you what that looks like over here. Again, there's a lot of CSS at the beginning. And then down here, we're using EJS. So we're able to get the forecast for this temperature 0 and temperature is 1, which is again just the city and state. And then we're iterating through this loop to show all of the temperatures for the next week. So instead of just outputting 7 fields like I showed before, it showed Friday, Friday night, and so on. So we want multiple of them, which is why we're using this for loop over here. And going back, the last thing here is this listener, and that's able to load the port on 8080. So if I go back, you're able to see that's 8080. And again, it's /get weather because of up here, we're doing app.get/weather, get weather. And you can, of course, change what each of these slashes are, as long as you're using this basic format right here where it's getting the latitude and the longitude. So another part of this application is if the user enters the wrong latitude or the wrong longitude, let's say I enter 30 as the latitude and 30 as the longitude. Of course, this might be an actual point in real life, but according to api.weather.gov, this might not correspond to an actual point in the API web service. So let's say I click submit. What the website does is it returns invalid URL, try another latitude and longitude. And so if you're wondering how exactly the website is able to discern whether a latitude and longitude are valid, as well as render this new AJS, going back to the code, the secret behind that is this boolean, which I set to true at the start. And anytime that this boolean becomes false, at the end it will return error.ejs instead of the results. So for example, I'm checking over here if the response.status code is not equal to 200. And that just means that there's some sort of error in the website or it's not able to load this URL from api.weather.gov. So at the end of all this, I'm checking for it a couple of times here. At the end, I'm checking if this boolean is true. And if it is, then it returns these results with the temperatures list that I made before. But if the boolean isn't true, then of course we want to set it back to true just for if the user is using the website multiple times. And then we're rendering error. So going to this error.ejs, it starts off with a lot of CSS and essentially it just returns what was shown on the website. With the header, it shows invalid URL. And then also it says this try another latitude and longitude, and it shows the go back button. So altogether with all 3 of these Express files, as well as this index.js, we're able to construct this really simple yet useful weather application. And if this tutorial helped you out, then please do consider subscribing to my channel and liking this video, and check out some of the other videos that I have on this channel, since I go through a lot of tutorials similar to this one. If you guys have any suggestions, then please feel free to write them in the comments down below, or if you want me to explain some parts of my code in further detail. That's it for me, and thank you for watching.